Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Job and the Librarians. I hope you all had a really great New Year. This is season 2, episode 1, and today we're going to be talking about the Crowns game. For everybody that's new or just now finding out about Job and the Librarians, is a book talk hosted by two librarians, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And it's a spoiler book talk as well, so if you hadn't read the book, you're going to be spoiled if you haven't read it. My name is Ericka, and I am a young adult librarian.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and I'm a reference librarian. And tonight, as Erica said, sorry, we also had a person who used to be on here named Julie, and I'm sure she will pop up from time to time. But we are reading and discussing The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye. And as you can see, if you're new, we like props, or I like props rather. Um, but yeah, so that's what we're talking about with a little history mix in when possible and author stuff. And yeah, and a lot of weirdness because that's how I roll.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and as usual, I always wait until the very last minute to read these. I finished it today, but like I was telling Laura, it was one of these books where it wasn't like a high fantasy novel, and it was easy to grasp at the same time. Normally, fantasy is one of my favorite genres to read, but at the same time, it's one of my most intimidating genres to read. And so I felt like this had a nice steady pace. It wasn't over wordy or anything. It didn't have a lot of names that you had to remember. It didn't have a lot of people that you had to figure out, okay, this person belongs to this family and all this. The vocabulary wasn't as bad as well. And I really enjoyed this. It kind of a little bit reminded me of Throne of Glass, just a little bit. But we'll talk about that later on. But I really did enjoy reading this book.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot too. And this is gonna be one of those moments where I really wish Julie was here to see how much she liked it or hated it. Because usually when I would rate high, she would rate low, and vice versa. But I'm in the same boat as Julie is, or as Erica. I'm so sorry. I clearly was on a roll there. Um, I expected a lot more fantasy given the topic that they were going with this. It was just enough history to make the fantasy work, and just enough fantasy to, um, I guess, buy into the history. Or yeah, I'm gonna stick with that.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't overly complicated to even try to understand it. And that's one of the things that I really liked about it. It just had that nice steady flow with it. It's one of these where you would recommend this to a person that's the first time or trying to get into fantasy novels. This is a book that I would probably recommend first for them to read.
I don't read a ton of fantasy. I actually like the fantasy I read. I tend to go very nerdy with my fantasy, and a little older. Like I tend to go Throne of Glass type-ish stuff where it's a completely different world, or Tolkien. Like I love Tolkien. I'm not like Stephen Colbert level of loving Tolkien, but it's like it's a brand new world and they're making up languages and it's far and removed from where we're at, as opposed to the magical realism version of fantasy. And a lot of times, like you see in like Throne of Glass, where it's fantasy mixed with history mixed with the real world. Though the funny thing is, I tend to be more into historical fiction as well, and um, I really liked that aspect of this book. That, like I said, it was just enough history mixed with just enough fantasy to make everything kind of work together.
Yeah, and I'm not a big history buff, but you can really tell that the author did a lot of research with this book, with the setting, the vocabulary, everything, with the characters and all that. You could tell the research was really put into this um, book. Wait, you okay, Lauren?
Um, yeah, I mean, there was so much history in
Okay,
this, and it was
hit me
great.
with
And
it.
I actually was attempting to read over stuff recently, and like I said to Julie earlier, I did a lot of that.
Yep. And then like the characters, I felt like I really liked the characters. I liked Nikolai, I liked Vika, I liked Pasha. I think my least character was probably his sister. But at the same time, I did feel like the characters were a little bit one dimensional. There weren't it wasn't a lot of growth within the characters until the very end. At the same time, I felt like it was still they still had a little oomph to them, if that makes sense. Um, Nikolai to me was kind of like the the calming of the story, and then of course you had Pasha who was um trying to just be himself, and that's one of the things that I liked about him as well. He wasn't really trying to fit in. And then Vika, she was a very strong hero in the story, and I really liked her. She was probably one of my favorite characters out of the whole story.
That's actually something awesome about this book is that there were so many strong characters in it. I mean, even the people that you kind of hated were strong characters.
Yeah, especially the 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 younger sister, the prince's sister.
Yeah, she was strong. I also like the lady who was mentoring the female mentor, the one that was mentoring Nikolai.
Oh
And
yeah, I started G. I couldn't pronounce her name.
he can't. I mean, that's kind of the I want to say beauty of Russian is they have these fantastic names to look at, but once you try to say it, unless you're used to it, doesn't work. Like I was able to do some of the names. Like I know Peter, well it's but Pyotr, Pyotr, and the nickname is Pasha. And the only reason I know how to say that is because I grew up with this kid who was Russian and her parents were immigrants. And her nickname growing up was Dasha. So I'm like, okay, I can say this. Like Nikolai, I was able to do. Um, Vika, I kind of got, and I actually was able to do her last name of Andreevna.
Oh, I couldn't even say all that. I
Yeah,
wasn't even trying. I just skipped right through it.
you're like, yeah, that Vika A is very awesome.
I know, right? But yeah, I there was some really good, strong characters, and even the setting and the magical system. Like first, let me back up. When they were getting ready to do the games, I was expecting more from the games. I was thinking that they were going to be like in a tournament, they're going to be fighting to the death. I didn't know it
I
was going to
really
be like
wanted the
just
first book of Throne of Glass in terms of what they were doing in for the tournament.
right. That's exactly what I thought it was gonna be, and it was more of them just, like, showing out, "Oh, I can make a bigger water wall, and I can make a different color building over here." I just really thought it was gonna be like one of these little things where you get into the ring and you do this hardcore magic and you fight to the death and all the other stuff. That's what I was thinking, but it was so different. But we did get a little bit of that towards the end, but it still wasn't what I was hoping it to be.
No, I agree with that. And the funny thing is, so reading this book and looking back at it, what I wanted was the tournament from Throne of Glass. Like, legit. Like, they're going at it, they're shooting arrows, and maybe, like, okay, now that the arrow's gone, let me show you what I can do with the arrow. Now that, just something more epic. But looking back, they kept saying how the way that they were moving, like, they were moving towards modern history,
Mhm.
or current history, whatever you want to say. And I mean, when this was happening was 1850, 1830,
I
right
believe.
in there. And so they're moving towards the American Civil War. They're moving towards the Napoleonic Wars. The wars that are causing modern warfare. and they're moving out of that time where people were believing in witches and magic, and just because you're a little weird doesn't mean you're the person that's causing an entire town to be sick. And with that kind of dynamic, I could see why somebody who does have powers would need to be lower key, because like people don't think it's a thing.
Right. And they said like, it implements fear. They don't know how to react to something like that. But I really thought it was interesting how it was only well, it was only two of them. And so that really makes me wonder if it's just more in hiding, which I believe it is. And I think maybe in the second book we'll see more of enchanters or people that's dealing with the magic system like they are.
It's a part of it was that I was wondering if there were more in hiding, but I also wondered if it's a two-way generation thing. Like the mentors were siblings.
Mhm.
And so part of me is like, if the mentors are siblings and there's, say, a two-a-generation deal, are Nikolai and Vitka siblings? Because they have both had weird pasts and they turned out to each be orphans, or they were at least told they were orphans.
Yeah. And even that their heritage is so close together, like you mentioned. And then when you find out that um like her father wasn't really her father, and then him finding out who his parentage was, that was kind of like I really wouldn't say as much of a shocker for her because I kind of felt like that was coming up just a little bit, but I thought that was interesting and well, and I really wish that we could have had a little bit more of a backstory. But that's a good arc for the second book too, to get in their backstory as well.
I think it'd be definitely an interesting arc. Um, I was less shocked about Nikolai's parentage. Like, basically, his dad was one of the many Tsar Alexanders, and he was Pasha's half brother.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that makes sense why it would be okay for this little orphan boy to be running around with the Tsarevich of Russia. On the flip side, with Vitka, starting the book when they were saying that she was the daughter of her mentor, I'm like, okay, that would make sense on how he would have found her and known about her powers. And, I bought into that story. And then when he said, actually, I found you on the streets, you were an orphan, I was like, bum, bum, bum.
And she found out about it in a letter at the same time. Like the way he passed, that ripped my heart out. How he did, and what he gave her basically his energy in a bracelet, and that was just sad, And it was just
It's
sad.
like, worst parenting decision ever.
I know, right? And the whole time he knew that the whole time, but I guess that is what it is. I mean, I wish that was different, but I think your mic is off.
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry. Yeah. Clearly, I'm having a weird moment. I apologize. Basically, I agree. Um, it is what it is. And I mean, it doesn't make the story bad in any way. It's just frustrating because it's like, how are you going to tell your child as you disappear on them that they're not biologically your child?
And she had to find out from somebody that she didn't even know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you hear these stories about adoption, and like you get ones like my grandmother who was adopted at a young age, and she knew she was adopted. Like the family was upfront about it. And then you get the kids that you hear the stories about that never know. They only find out after the passing, or like the parents that decide that they're going to wait to tell their kids until they're older for whatever reason. And it's not a wrong decision. Like it's one of those moments where there is not a wrong decision. It's more of how you handle it to working with your family, but it's also like how it worked in the book was probably like the worst case scenario for the situation. You tell them in a letter as you disappear, and it's not even like the letter is willed to her and she's finding out with family. She's in the process of trying not to die during this competition. You've disappeared. God knows where you're at. And you have Ted down the street deciding to hand her this letter just in case something's happening.
Yeah, that'd be kind of frustrating, and you can understand why she was upset, where her frustration comes from because of that. And then not only is she dealing with that, she's trying to, like you said, survive this game. She doesn't want to kill him, but she feels like she maybe owes that to Sergey. Did I say his name right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like she feels like she owes that to him. And now that he passed away, it's even greater. So, but yeah, that was one of the parts I was like, no, no, I wish that was different.
I mean, on some level I get why it happened like it did, because it's not like the mentors were able to really be present in the game. And raising her as his child probably made it a lot safer for both of them, but it doesn't make that moment selfless.
Yeah. Yep, 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 yep. Um, lost my train of thought about to say. But another thing was the when the can't even think of what it was called, but it was toward the end when they were getting when after the mom. That's what I'm trying to say. The mom, Nikolai's mom. I was like, when she showed up on the scene, I was like, oh snap, things is about to get real. And how she went to the village to get her son and found out that they sold him before the lady could even get out even more. She just basically just sliced them all up. And I was like, this lady right here is gonna be the part
Yeah,
of the story you about to be like, it's about to get real.
it was like the one moment when they started going into the backstory and talking about her. Like they started mentioning her. My first thought was, "Oh, this is gonna be a shit show." Like there's no way around it. Like, and then it turns out that they invaded her town, but already she was already in the affair with the czar or something like that, or like she had just started it, or it was something. It was like right on the line, and they and she gets pregnant, and somehow after she has the baby, gets separated from him. So then she goes back to find him, like tracks him down. And it was like every step of the way, it just perpetually got worse with this backstory of like Nikolai getting separated from his mother.
Yeah, it was. And then when she found out that he's gonna be in the games, she was like, oh, I'll just kill the Tsar. And how she
Because
did
that's a
that
good
was
idea, right?
yeah, how she did that was just crazy. And then and you could tell she just didn't think any of this stuff through because when she finally introduced herself to him, he was like, I can't be with you. You're a monster. You're committing treason and all this other stuff." And she was like, "You're my son."
This is my best friend's family.
And he was like, "No." So obviously she didn't think any of that through. But based off the little bit that we got from her, you'll see probably a lot more of her in the second one. And
Oh God, I hope we do. Like she's just such a hot mess. I mean, with reason, but she's just such a hot mess of a character that I'm like, I need more of you just to kind of like feel better about my life. Just a little bit.
yeah, she had it bad. I mean, and then she was siphoning her energy from maggots and the bugs and stuff. And then she
Yeah,
siphoned
it's like
energy.
you read stuff like that and you're like, oh, thank God. I thought my life was bad, but at least I'm not like living off of maggots.
She
Like,
was doing that for 19 years, or it's yeah, I believe. I think your mic is
I
off.
mean, it's moments like that where, I mean, it kind of explains why on the rare occasion that I watch the Kardashians, I watch it and I binge watch it. Sorry to those of you who watch the Kardashians and love them, but like I start watching that show and like my family will sit there and go, "How are you watching this? Why?" I'm like, "Because I feel better about my life at the end. Like whatever decision I make won't be that. Like it, my life would never be. My entire life is being run by my mother, and I'm now married to Kanye West, and like that that will never be my life, and it's fine. And I feel good about that after watching their show. And that's kind of like what Nikolai's mom is to me, where you read this character and you feel awful because this stuff is just awful that's happened to her. But then you're like, well, regardless of what I do in my life, at least I won't be showing up to my son's competition and killing his best friend's father and trying to redeem myself in my child's eyes only to commit treason and have to maybe go to jail.
Exactly. And then she said the the czar's son may not even be his. So it's a lot of stuff that's set up for the second one, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the second one. It's a lot that's set up for it, especially the way the book ended. After the czar and his wife, they got no, she didn't get killed. She died from natural causes, but after they passed away, he just had to grow up. But the way he had to do it, he felt betrayed by his best friend, the woman that he loved didn't reciprocate those feelings towards him. And then he has his sister whispering in his ear what he needs to do as well.
And that
And,
sister is crazy.
and she's only 15.
She's actually the one where I'm like, I realize you're crazy, but you might need to be the one that's actually in charge of Russia right now.
Because she was something else too. But she was in his ear at the same time. And the fact that he had to make them make a decision who lives or dies, and that mentally that tormented him because it says that after Vika won, he was trying to write it out, and he cried at the same time because he lost his best friend, and it was under those circumstances of how he lost his best friend too.
It's one of those things where watching Pasha at the end, like I liked Pasha through most of the book because for the most part the character is a fun-loving guy. Like he's just this, yeah, he's this guy where I'm like, okay, as the chubby nerdy kid, I might hang around that guy. Like we might hang out just because he might be like, hey, this is kind of a cool sidekick to have, but that's about it. Um, and towards the end, he goes from this fun-loving guy to this kid that's got to grow up really quickly, but doesn't really do it well because he's got his crazy sister in his ear, and he decides to listen to her rather than work things through and try to think it out. And as you see, and as he sits there and things happen, he's like, I'm sorry, this was my sister's idea. I'm just sitting there going, you're weak. Stop
Yeah,
being
and
weak.
putting the blame
Like
on somebody else. Like, wake up, you're the czar. This is
you made the decision to call it into this and tell them they had to kill each other right now.
So of course, she's not going to forgive him quickly because he made it to where his best friend is dead, and you know he put that rap there between them, and that's entirely his fault. But he tries to blame his sister about the whole thing or the passing of his parents, and that's
Like
no
it's literally
justifiable.
everything else.
Yeah, this is no justifiable reason as to why he did that.
I agree. I mean, I get that he's what, 16?
I think he's
I get that.
17. Yeah, 17 or
Yeah, I
18.
mean, I get that he's a teenager, and on some level, at 17, he's thinking this shit through.
Yeah, and I understand that he
But
had a
on the
lot on his mind. He had a lot of stuff going on. A lot of them battled things mentally on there, but still,
like we get all this. But that said, there's a big chunk of me that's like, you still listen to your sister at 17. What kid isn't going? this person over here is telling me that they need to kill each other now.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right.
And I was
On
wondering,
top of
like,
which,
doesn't he have like other like advisors or whatnot,
he should.
or he's
I
like
don't
a
remember
coach?
if he had, but he should have. And there's also a flip side of it to me that's going, a lot of times, especially in those days, royals were trying to train their children up. They had tutors. They, you know, were, especially in their older teens, were supposed to be sitting in on meetings with the advisors and the czar, the king, the emperor. A lot of times they had their own households. Pasha in the book still lived with mom and dad, which is fine because in 2017, teenage boys are still living with mom and dad. But not so much when Pasha should have been doing it. Pasha actively avoided the meetings with the advisors. Pasha actively fell asleep and skipped out on his tutoring sessions. At every turn, when his parents were trying to get him prepared to become the czar, he actively tried not to.
Yeah, you could tell that he didn't want that, from even when they was telling how him and Nikolai met, he would dress up as a commoner, and not too good of a commoner, but he was dressed up as one. And
He tried so hard but was so bad at it.
exactly, because they were able to tell by what his boots, and then even Nikolai said that even the tear in his jeans were
A
perfect.
little too good.
So, but yeah, you could tell that, and the fact that his sister was, it's like normally you would have the roles as reversed. You would see not necessarily the immaturity in the sister, but it's kind of like that. Whatever's in the sister should be in him. Him leading an example for his sister, if that makes sense. But that's not the case in this. And you can tell that he didn't want that, especially for his birthday, how he was at the masquerade and he was mingling with the people, and how his father fussed at him, made him go back and change, and he was just forced to do a lot of stuff that wasn't him. And that, I feel like if he was able to be himself with those duties, then their relationship would be better too.
Well, and
But you
here's the
can't have it
funny
all.
thing. True. Very true. Here's the funny thing, though, that I found out about, that I thought about with this. In terms of Pasha and his sister kind of has a mind like Tywin Lannister. Like, I feel like she would be fantastic at leading a political system, at being in charge. Like, she gets it. But she's knucking futs. And, like, just nuts. Like, you can't get around it. Like, she's out there. While Pasha doesn't really have the mind for it, from what I read, from the book, um, he's more likable and he probably should be the person in charge because I feel like he's somebody who should be in charge, who is a Tywin Lannister, who knows how to run, who has the political mind and can do it, but doesn't want to be in charge and isn't just crazy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I agree. Any of you guys like um what was you guys' favorite part about the story? You want to comment about it and whatnot? Also, the there really wasn't. I mean, like I said, the things that really pointed out to me with this story was the the writing in the story itself. Like I said, when the author did her research and whatnot, it's just one of those. I feel like the stories you can just sit and it's just such an easy read. And like I said, it's not complicated or anything like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really, really like this story. Even though it was like that, I was still able to get into the characters,
I
get
agree.
into it was that's why I liked it. Um is this her debut novel? too?
It I think it was. Let me see. I found her website, and I will say this from what everything I saw, like it's like people are praising it too. I think it was her debut.
This is really good, for a debut
Yeah.
novel.
Well, and I mean, I like it. I liked it better than say the what's it call it? The long journey to the small angry planet. Because like you could tell the author of the long journey to the small angry planet did their research and it was totally sci-fi. But I hit a point with that show, with that book, where they were getting super technical with all that. And I realized that being technical in that aspect was also giving you the background information you needed to continue. What was nice about Evelyn Skye is she did the research, and you could tell she did the research without her going down all these rabbit holes and being super technical about things.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I felt like even though it's kind of different, it's different genres, but I agree with you saying. It's not like, "Hey, I did my research and you're gonna know that I did my research." It just was effortlessly, and that's what good about it.
Yeah, I mean that was like super nice about it, like super nice. And I mean, like I said, it got me afterwards going to, excuse me, to her website. And let's see here. Her website is evelynskye.com. If anybody's interested, and I will link this to the what's it called? The Buddy Read page. I also found a Smithsonian article on photos from Imperial Russia that are supposed to be really cool. So I'll link that there as well, since the book is supposed to be set in Imperial Russia. And she's got this book out, and she's got what's it call it? The Crown's Fate. That's the name of the second book. That came out last year, I believe.
Yep.
And she's got another series coming out this year called Circle of Shadows. And like I really like her bio on her page, because it says Evelyn has a BA in Russian literature and history from Stanford University, which not surprising, and a JD from Harvard Law School. She was once offered a job by the CIA. God, that's kind of my. I would love to work for the CIA. Yeah, they're supposed to also have a fantastic library. Dear CIA, if you're watching now, I would like to work for you. You might not hire me, but I would like to be there. And she not so secretly wishes she was on So You Think You Can Dance. I'm not with her on that one. I know I can't. And if you challenge her to a pizza eating contest, she guarantees she will win. And Miss Evelyn Skye, if you're watching, I'm down. I will totally eat pizza with you and try to fight you on it.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I didn't know she was writing another, series to come out this year. I might need to get my hands on that one too.
I still need to get the second book in the series. As I told Ericka before we started on everything, I went to this book club that we have at my library, that the entire premise of the book is bring your own book. And you come up, we have 2 hours set aside where you can come and read your book and do what you want, and just basically have adult SSR. Though everybody keeps telling me that there's more to this group than adult SSR. But but I literally just went and grabbed this book because it happened to be in at the branch that I went to, and go up to the book club and read the book in a day. Because I had 2 hours and I was like, I'll be.
You read it in a day? Yeah, I finished I started a little bit, last night, maybe like 10%, and I had a physical copy, and I was like, "I could get done a lot quicker on my phone," so I downloaded it from Overdrive, and I finished it today, I think at 5 o'clock today, I think. But that's in my nature that I always wait to the very end to read a book. Like I say, challenge accepted.
Well, and for me, like this was one of those books where I, like I said, it happened to be in at the branch that I went to, and I fully expected having to borrow it that day to finish it at home. But I ended up just being so engrossed by it that I just sat there and read it during the book club and got it done.
Yep. Like I said, it was really easy to do. But this really wasn't, I mean, we kind of talked about a lot of it. It really wasn't a lot because I guess it's just the first book. I feel like if we was to do the second book, it would be a lot more to talk about because there's so many unanswered questions and all that stuff.
But I kind of love that this one at least ended on unanswered questions. Though I don't feel like I'm unfulfilled with the unanswered questions. It just kind of ended in a good place. And now you're like, oh my god, what happens to Pasha? How does Vika survive being the Imperial Enchanter?
Yeah,
And
because
I,
there's tension between them, between
yeah,
Vika and Pasha. It's a lot of tension. So, she has a duty to do as his enchanter. So, and then I really feel like the sister is going to really overshadow a lot
yeah.
in the second one. I really do. And yeah, I just feel
Though
like
I
the
will
second one's gonna
say,
be really good.
yeah, and I will say this: I really hope I do not burn out on this series, like I did on the Throne of Glass series. Like I was that person where I liked book one in Throne of Glass, and I liked the novellas that came between book one and book two, and I liked book two. But by the time I hit book three, I'm like, great, we're just rehashing stuff that has happened in the last three previous things that I read, and I'm done with this story. Come up with something new, and I'm I'm really hoping that's not the case with this series.
I
Like,
th- I think
really,
it's a duology.
yeah.
So I
The
think that's it.
yeah. So I will toss in the little bit of research that I found um on Russia. Um, First off, I want to give a shout out to the History Channel, not current History Channel, but like early 2000s History Channel, late 90s. You know, when they actually were still showing history and earning that name they gave themselves. They have a really great documentary called Russia, Land of the Czars, if I remember correctly. And it basically goes from the first czar through Nicholas II, who was the last one. And they talk about kind of the history, but in discussing the history, they focus on the czar at the time. So they start with one and they talk about how he built it up and what was also going on in the world during his time all the way through, like I said, Nicholas II. And they talk about, of course, World War One and what was going on then and causes of the Russian Revolution, which brings me into what I found. From what I read, initially, what we now know as Russia was Imperial Russia. And they were Imperial Russia from 1613 through 1917. And that's, Russia as a whole, as a
Mhm.
ginormous unit. The Russian Revolution happened in 1917. And before 1917, they went what you could call Imperial Russia during that time frame was the Grand Duchy of Moscow, the Tsardom of Russia, and the Russian Empire. I've recently had a conversation about how words change and what each group calls themselves. So I found this change of what they name themselves in the course of 300 years kind of interesting because as a historian, you look back and you say that 300 years is Imperial Russia. But as they lived it, they went through Grand Duchy of Moscow, Tsardom of Russia, and Russian Empire. After the Russian Revolution, they became the Russian Republic, which, if you know anything about the Russian Revolution, is kind of ironic because it was Leninism and Sovietism and communism. It wasn't a republic. America's a republic. it works on democracy and the vote and not necessarily capitalism, but what Russia became after the revolution isn't what a republic is. But they only were the Russian Republic for a year. In 1922, which is a couple years later, they became the Soviet Union, which is like the big name we remember. And they were the Soviet Union from 1922 to 1991. With, let's tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev. That's literally the one thing I remember from Reagan's presidency. And you're welcome for that. What were you going to say, Ericka?
Nothing. That was interesting.
Yeah, and the last thing I was going to say about Russia as a whole was the Russian Federation. Since 1991, they stopped being the Soviet Union and they reverted back to being Russia, but they're Russia in terms of now being the Russian Federation. Why do I suddenly get the feeling I'm going to, as I'm using my air quotes for Russian Federation, I'm going to be bitched at by somebody from NATO later. Or not NATO, but the EU, or whoever decides that they're going to yell at me for using air quotes for a country's name. And I am sorry.
Try to sue our what was I hidden on our heart? That saying, whatever.
Yeah. But so, as I'm reading this, I fully intended to, do history, and there is a lot of history. They had 300 years of being ruled by a monarchy. And not only by a monarchy, but in that 300 years, it was the same family name. They all were the Romanovs. Granted, some of them had married in, you get Empress Catherine the Great, who was German. She married into the family, killed somebody, and she did it underhandedly, though. She was very smooth about it. And, became Empress Catherine the Great, and ruled in the stead of her son or her stepson. I forget which one it was. She kind of did like Queen Hatshepsut did to ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
And so she ruled, and then you get it was just a weird mix of German and Russian who ended up ruling towards the end of what it was, because you get the Catherine the Great who married in from smaller German empires, and then you get a lot of mixing of the Russian aristocracy into it. But the end of it was with Tsar Nicholas II, who was also a Romanov, and we still get theories about his kids surviving in the Russian Revolution. But I mean, that kind of bookends it. It's essentially one family name that's ruling this giant country and expanding the country. Initially, they started as essentially Moscow and what the area around Moscow is. And at one point, the landmass of what Russia is went from essentially the Pacific to where Poland is. Think about it, one family ruling half the globe.
Yeah.
But okay, so now that I've gone on that tangent, the other tangent I was going to mention was this Imperial Enchanter, which I thought was kind of cool, because as I was reading it, I'm like, holy crap, this is Rasputin. When you talk about Tsar Nicholas II and his wife, the Tsarina Alexandra, the person you tend to talk about a lot is Grigory Rasputin, because he was supposed to be essentially a faith healer. Shake some oils, pray, do a few other minor things, and do that and doing that kind of stuff, worked his way up at court. And he was able to do that because of hemophilia. I promise that's all connected, because I realize that sounds like a giant leap. But Tsarina Alexandra was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria of England. And through Queen Victoria, so many monarchies in Europe gained hemophilia, which is the bleeding disease. It's dormant in females. When males have it, if anything happens that causes them to bleed, they have trouble not bleeding, like stopping. Um, like Queen Victoria's son, Leopold, I believe, had it, like was born with it from his mother. So that's how you could tell. That's how people know Queen Victoria was a carrier. Females are carriers, and he actually survived to adulthood, which, from what I understand about hemophilia, is uncommon. Um, Usually, some kind of childhood accident happens, and they have trouble getting clotting to happen, and or an accident happens during your teen years, and the same thing happens, and essentially you die because of this. Well, fast forward to Alexandra and Tsar Nicholas having children. They had 4 daughters: Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia. And after the string of 4 daughters and no issues with these 4 daughters, they have their one son, Alexei, who is a hemophiliac. And so they would have all these issues with him having accidents and getting these large lumps on different parts of his body after an accident because of just bleeding and it pooling and building up. And in walks somebody with Rasputin and says, "Hey, he can help you." And it seemed like he was, and through that he was able to work his way up. So reading about the Imperial Enchanter, I kept going, that's this guy. Like, it's not this guy, but that's the general idea behind this guy.
Yeah. All of that is interesting. Like the closest I've gotten to any type of Russia history or like the Disney movie Anastasia. It's like the closest.
With Bartok the Bat, oh my god, that movie's great.
So, yeah, because the name Romanov, like it's all of them.
I mean, that's all of them, but I mean, I will say this. Shout out to the movie Anastasia for one, Kelsey Grammer having not a great, but at least a decent Russian accent through the entire damn movie. And John Cusack as an animated guy.
Oh yeah.
It's just great. And just the smart ass bat. I love it. And Christopher Lloyd was in it too. Oh my god.
Yep, it was good. That's like the closest I've gotten to it.
Well, yeah, like I remember watching that movie as a kid, like at my grandparents' house, and um going from that to we had a friend growing up who actually was Russian, so every so often we would hear them speak Russian. I cannot speak it to save my life. But if I hear people around me speaking it, I'm like, "Oh, hey, hi. Is that Russian? Are you speaking Russian right now? Are you guys are you from there?" And they're like, "Yeah, yes, that is Russian. Do you speak it?" No, I know what it sounds like.
Yeah, we had a lot of foreign exchange students at my school when I was in high school, and we got a couple from Russia. All over, really.
But yeah, I mean, and through watching the documentaries and stuff, like that's how I'm watching the documentaries and actually hearing friends speak it. That's the only reason I have any ability to say any of these names. Like I can say Nikolai correctly. Actually, I think I mispronounced that last name. Vika's last name is Andreyeva. So Andreeva. So basically, if I remember the one Russian lit class I took, because we actually just discussed this, children when you get a last name in Russia, if there's an A on the end of it, it's feminine. So the name for her father would have been Andreev, and because it's Vika's a girl, it becomes and Dreva. And then from what a friend has told me, they get their middle names from their father. So, like taking Tsar Nicholas II for um, for example, his children, all four of his daughters, their middle name would have been Nikolaevna. Nikolaevna. Where the Tsarevich becomes Alexei Nikolaevich, I believe.
I'd have butchered all that stuff up. No way I could say those names and. Mm.
Yeah, like I said, the only reason I know how to say them is because I've heard them. Like, people, like a friend of mine, her middle name is Sergeyevna.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'd have
And so
messed up
she and her
all.
mom, like when they were like talking to my brother and I, when we were little, we're like we actually would see this name and we're like, okay, you need to tell us how you say these middle names. So of so essentially, girl middle names get Iovna and boys get Vich, hence Zarevich or Nikolaevich and Nikolaevna.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. But yeah. You guys leave any comments or questions or anything that we may have missed in the story that you may want our opinion on or whatnot. But it really wasn't a lot to talk about this with this story.
Yeah, I think we hit the high notes, and I mean, we pretty much agreed on the book as well, so there wasn't a lot of back
Yeah,
and forth.
yeah. And that's hardly ever because like you would normally like my ratings would be towards in the middle or very low. I gave this book 4 stars.
I gave it 4 stars as well.
So, but yeah, and I don't
Um,
hardly like because I was reading on Goodreads, some people considered it more like you said a historical fiction. I didn't
mhm.
really did a fantasy, and I felt like it was more for me. It was more fantasy than historical fiction, but like I said, this is good for someone that may want to dive into historical fiction with a little bit of other type of genre in it as well. I feel like this book is like the perfect mixture to give to someone that wants to dive into those type of genres.
I will say this: if you look at Goodreads, it does have a nice mix of ratings. Like it primarily has 4 stars, followed by 5 and 3. Like it's about the same on the 5 and 3 stars. So it seems like and then it's got a few 2 stars and a 1 star, or a couple 1 stars, and it seems like this is one of those books where either people really like it,
I really hate it.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, that's all I have. I didn't really see any quotes that I wanted to mention or any lines like that. Let me go over my notes. No, there really wasn't anything that really stood out to me as far as like quotes and whatnot.
Yeah, like there wasn't any one specific line that jumped out at me. It just was a nice, cohesive story. And I
Yeah,
think that jumped out at me more than anything else.
I think it may have been like one. It was at the very end when he gave. Well, it's at the end that it was mentioned, but when he gave her the war, it said, "Imagine and it shall be. There are no limits." That was like one of the only things that I saw where people took out of the story.
Though I will say this, the one creepy bit about the story is immediately after that where she said, Vika smiled. Her magic was not alone. The shadow was undeniably Nikolai.
Yeah, that was kind of weird a little bit.
It's like, look, I get that you loved him and you guys are tight, but you're now staring at shadows and hoping against hope that the guy that you held in your arms as he died would be the shadow.
Yeah. That was kind of weird, but like I said, I'm really excited to get to read the second one. I actually have it downloaded on Overdrive. I'm gonna start it tonight, and I really want to see. Like I said, it's a
Eh,
duology, and I really want to see just how it's a lot. It's like a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot going on, and I really want to see how it just all comes together, and
Per
hopefully,
usual, I am the person in the group that doesn't have the next book in the series yet, and I'm probably gonna put it off for a little bit.
I have to read this one. I need to know what's gonna happen.
Oh, why do I get the feeling that I'm gonna get text messages later? Lauren, oh my god, you're not gonna believe this.
Yep. Just be prepared for it. But
I'll take the
like,
spoilers; they'll be fine.
but like if there isn't any comments or questions or anything, I think that's about it. We don't have a book chosen for February yet. We'll probably get that announced tomorrow, and it
Yeah,
may be since February is a short month, it'll probably be like a short story or something that's quick
yeah.
that won't
We don't
take.
have a date yet either. We are gonna try to get this stuff picked out, hammered out. We will announce in the Buddy Read group and on our Facebook pages like we normally do.
Yep. So just look out for that. And if you have any suggestions, you can always write
Put
it
them
in
in
the
the
Facebook and tag one of us,
yeah
and we'll see it. Lauren is on there a lot more than
all
I
the time.
am, but you can always tag her and she'll let me know. So if you have any suggestions about it, just let us know, and
Yeah,
we'll get that.
and we each have pretty epic to be read lists. Like I keep all mine on Goodreads, and so if you guys pass along a book, yeah, we'll see it. We'll look it up. We will definitely consider it. At the very least, consider it. If not, add it to our each of our lists.
Yeah, to read. So yep, I did not know my camera was like. You just see my nose and okay.
I saw the top part of your lip. I could see your mouth was moving. It was
'Cause I
fine.
have
Like
the chat room screen over the screen that shows my face. So all I see is okay, I
I
think that's
kept
better.
thinking you were going for an artsy look in this one. I'm like,
Oh,
here I am, like the doofus that I am, in like the corner, and Erica's being like all artsy and in the corner, and
no. Okay, well, it is what it is. Just the
next
whole
time around we'll be more on her game.
the whole video you just see my from my nose on up. But oh well.
Upper lip and up. So I mean, we saw at least part of your mouth. Like it was, yeah.
Because normally Julie is the one that handles the chat room and stuff. So I'm trying to have this over here and then this here, but I'll get it, I promise. I'll get it worked out. Your mic is on. I mean
There was a
off.
point. There was a point where I left the group, and I do apologize for that. But Julie's sound died on me like mid sentence. And it was like sentence number one of her entire. And I'm just sitting there thinking, act like you know what she's saying. So I jump in like, okay, it looks like she stopped. Just add. And then like I'm like, I think I just cut her off. I need to just abort, get out, just move. And yeah. Like I said, next time around we're gonna be more on our game. We're not gonna have these weird, not so artsy yet kind of artsy angles,
I
and we'll
know.
remember each other's names, and it'll be fine.
Oh yeah, this still was a good show. I always have fun doing this. So
Yeah, you guys know us. There's always if we can at least laugh at ourselves, if not anything else.
yeah, we can. And my camera still is just still sliding back. So
At this point, I swear to God, at this point, your camera has to be like, "This is what we're doing now. We're clearly in an art film. It's what's
yeah, because I
happening."
tried to fix it, but it's just going back. But
Like you fix it and then it just slowly migrates north.
yeah, but yeah, that's all I got. So
Yep.
if Lauren, you don't have anything else to add or
No.
anything?
Like I said, I will post the links for the Smithsonian article that I mentioned and for Evelyn Skye's website in the Buddy Read account.
Yep. Well, we will get the February book announced probably tomorrow afternoon or maybe evening. It'll probably be tomorrow that we get it to you all and the date. but we had fun. Hope you all have a good night, and we will see you guys next time.
See you next time,
Bye.
guys.